Hi everyone, welcome back to the Dr. Sia channel. In the video here today, we're going to be talking about something that's really concerning for me, which is victim blaming culture. Well, let's get started. Alright, what do I mean by victim blaming culture? Well, in essence, victim blaming is when something really bad happens to somebody and we blame not the person who did the crime, but we blame the person who was the victim of the crime. So for example, if someone gets sexually assaulted, rather than looking at the sexual assaulter, we might be looking at the sexual assaultee, the one who got assaulted, and say things like, oh, well, you shouldn't have walked there, you shouldn't have worn that, you should have known better, or something like that. We could be looking at, for example, someone who got robbed, and instead of looking at the robber, looking at the person who got robbed, saying, oh, well, you shouldn't have, again, walked there. You should have left your phone at home. You shouldn't have walked down that alley or whatever else. We could be looking at a person who's getting abused in a relationship. And again, rather than looking at the abuser, we look at the person who's getting abused, saying, oh, well, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. Now, why is this something that I'm making a video about? Well, because it is surprisingly common for people to hold this point of view. In some places, it's cultural. There are a lot of places in the world where victim blaming is part and parcel way of actually looking at your world every day. It's about looking at what the victim did wrong rather than what the perpetrator did wrong. I find that a lot of my patients actually have something like this going on for them. Not that they are victim blamers, but they are themselves victims of victim blaming. And in fact, what I'll find is that a lot of my patients actually are victim blaming themselves. They would never victim blame somebody else, but when they are the victims of something negative or horrific, they do blame themselves. Now, what do we need to do about that? Well, what we need to do is whenever we hear victim blaming, we need to be able to have conversations with people where we tell them specifically how wrong that is, how harmful that is, how hurtful that is, how unhelpful that is, so that we can really put into context the actual issue. And the actual issue that results in victim blaming is that the victim blamer, more often than not, cannot contain the experience, the feelings they have about living in a world where, or towards a person, the feelings that they have toward the world or the person who would do something like that. In short, what I mean is it's easier to imagine that only people who are stupid, whatever that means, are people who get robbed or sexually assaulted. That only people who did something wrong are the ones who brought that on themselves, because that helps whoever heard about it feel like they live in a safer world, a nicer world, a more beautiful world, or whatever it is that they want. It's kind of much easier to imagine that bad countries get bombed, than no, actually, some really good people get bombed for some really horrific reasons. And yeah, if your country is one of those countries that goes around and bombs people, I'm sorry, but they're not bombing the baddies, Like, it's easier to imagine that. And of course, that's used in political discourse, whenever certain countries want to bomb certain other countries, they're bombing really bad. They're bombing the bad people, they're the Avengers or the Justice League, and they're going to go and fight, Ultron or Thanos or Darkseid or whatever. But reality is so much more different than that. In reality, there are very rarely bad guys and good guys, and bad actions or harmful actions tend to be harmful actions irrespective. So this idea of kind of victim blaming and saying, oh, but that country just got bombed because they did bad things. Yeah, no, look, you live in a country that does horrific things. And if you can be okay with that in your mind, if you can say, okay, that's the truth. That's what actually happens. I'm not going to blame victims. There are people who go around and do horrific things. There are countries who do horrific things. There are governments who do horrific things. And if you can accept that, the reality, if you can accept the reality that happens, then those emotions that you get about it could actually help you do something useful that would be helpful towards, I don't know, maybe fighting the cause, maybe, fighting, I don't know, getting your rights, maybe protesting, maybe voting for people who seem like they actually take issue with these things, maybe talking to your local police, whatever else it is that you can do. The likelihood of a beneficial outcome for you and your community is going to be better if you can look at the reality of things and not blame the victims that are the people who are suffering these acts and actions. I hope you found this video useful. I hope you get a chance to talk to somebody else about it. Let's stop victim blaming. And I want to know what your comments are about this. What are your thoughts about this? I'm really interested. Let me know. Have you ever been the victim of victim blaming? Have you ever been a victim blamer? Do you take any issue with what I'm saying? Let me know. Drop a like, and I'll see you again for the next video.